Andre, we've got some breaking news, dude. Shots have been fired.
Whoa, dude, it's Ford versus Jeep.
That's right, it's Explorer versus Grand Cherokee. And if you guys haven't heard about this story, sit back because it's a good one. And basically in this video, we're going to tell you what the story is, and then we're going to actually go and try to prove one of these automotive industry titans right or wrong. So let's talk about the story. Recently in a magazine called, a website called Muscle Cars and Trucks, our friend Jim Morrison,
Yes.
who heads up the Jeep brand,
Yep.
and has done so for a long time, threw down some pretty interesting quotes about his competitor, the Ford Explorer.
But not any Ford Explorer. This is a new Explorer model that's just coming out now called the the Timberline.
No, that's not Justin Timberlake. The
Explorer
Timberline.
Timberline.
We did a walk around of it at the Chicago Auto Show, so if you're interested in seeing what that's all about, there it is. We've got a complete video on it. So our friend Jim said, and
Yes.
this is actually really interesting, I actually feel sorry for Ford Explorer Timberline customers that get tricked, Andre.
What?
Yeah, that's what he feels sorry for him. Because he went on, according to Muscle Car and Trucks, you can paint a tow hook red. It doesn't mean that behind that tow hook, it would even hold up in the right moment that it needs to.
Okay, so I guess what he's saying here is, I'm just interpreting, is that this new trim of the Explorer, the Timberline, which is supposed to be a little bit more off-road worthy, he's saying it would not live up, or at least it wouldn't do the same stuff that the Grand Cherokee would do.
Well, because he went on to say more.
Okay.
We design all of those trail-rated elements from the ground up. Fair enough. It's not just a marketing term. It's capability that's bred in. You don't just put stickers and paint on things. We build it in. We build it in with incredible capability. So basically, he's saying that the Explorer, and I'm paraphrasing here, is a poser. The Timberline.
Okay, well, we should look at the details, right? So we test all kinds of vehicles off-road here on TFL Car, TFL Off-Road channels, TFL Truck. And we have also an ORI Score, which is the off-road index.
Yep.
And I just got some notes. And we know what Ford did, as far as on paper, right, on the Timberline Explorer. And we also know what the Grand Cherokee, the latest one, we also know what it has.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A couple of years ago, we put together this ORI Score, which is basically a way of ranking off-road vehicles on their off-road worthiness. And so because we know the specs, such things as approach, departure, breakover angle, because we know what size wheels and tires they have, because we know what other functionality they have, such as a low range, we're able then to score it on our ORI index and come up with a number. So what is the perfect number on the ORI?
Well, it would be basically 99
Yep.
out of 100 because we reserve 1 point just for opinion. But we want this to be very, very objective, right? It's just based on numbers, based on data, and not really based on our opinions.
Yeah, and so we wanted to be able to give you guys a way to objectively compare vehicles on paper to see how good they are. Of course, we then follow up with testing, but in this case, we're going to be talking about the ORI score for both the Ford Explorer Timberline and, of course, the new Jeep Grand Cherokee. And the great thing is Andre did his homework, and so you scored both vehicles. So why don't we kind of go through the ORI score of first the Grand Cherokee, and then we'll talk about the Timberline, and then we'll give you the numbers for both.
Yeah, and specifically I pulled 2 Grand Cherokees numbers. We'll focus on one of them, which is the Trailhawk. And I think Jim Morrison, in his statements, he referred actually to this picture behind me, which is actually their Trailhawk version of the Grand Cherokee, which is the most off-road capable Grand Cherokee that's coming out right now. This is in Moab, Utah.
Yep.
And you could see it climbing, right, this slope. So I pulled numbers for that. So let's go over that. So it's by category. So first, does it have four-wheel drive?
Yes.
Yes. So that's 20 points.
All right.
And both, actually, the Explorer, of course, has an all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive system, and so does the Grand Cherokee.
So right now they're even.
They're even, Steven. I even pulled numbers for the Grand Cherokee L. This is the longer version of the Grand Cherokee. 3-row, because it matches a little bit closer to the Explorer, right?
Yes.
So the next thing, this is now where things get interesting, is the transfer case low range.
Yeah, because low range, of course, allows you to multiply the power of the engine, allowing you to not only go farther and deeper and steeper, but also control the vehicle more because you've got a little bit more, well, basically range in the throttle.
Yeah, and it's also kind of relieves some of the pressure on the engine, right? The engine doesn't have to be screaming at a high RPM. The engine can be kind of rolling at lower RPMs, and the low range can help you go over obstacles. The Explorer does not offer a low range. They have many other modes we can talk about, right? But they don't have low range transfer case. The Grand Cherokee, both the L and the regular Grand Cherokee have it. So this is where one of the main differences is, and it's worth 20 points.
So right now, what are we at?
We're 40 Jeep Grand Cherokee versus 20 on the Ford Explorer.
Now let me just kind of unpack that. So a lot of vehicles will have a terrain management system. For instance, you'll be able to like the Ford Bronco Sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can dial in rocks and sand or mud and ruts or snow. And what that does is it changes the computer software that controls where the torque and power is sent and how the wheels are being braked by the ABS system. It does not do anything mechanical. It doesn't change any of the gear ratios. Now, a regular transfer case takes and actually changes the gear ratio. It's a mechanical, it's a big metal thing with
It's
gears
a mechanical
in it.
device, yeah.
Yeah, and it actually changes the gear ratio. And so it adds weight, but it also adds complexity, but it also adds a lot of capability.
And control.
That's why we give it 20 points.
Yes. The next category is all-terrain tires.
Yes.
So when we came up with a scoring system, tires are very, very important, right? So all-terrain tires, so both the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk and Explorer Timberline actually offer an all-terrain tire option, which is great. I think they're doing the right thing there. So both of them get 10 points. That's how we rate that. The L version of the Grand Cherokee does not. So only all-season tires there. So they don't have a Trailhawk long version of the Trailhawk. So the long version of Grand Cherokee gets 0.
But we did give them the 10 points because they do offer it on the regular Grand Cherokee.
Exactly.
Trailhawk.
So right now the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk is at 50 points and Timberline Explorer is at 30.
All right. What's the next criteria?
Ground clearance.
All right.
That's huge,
Yes.
right? What kind of obstacles can you climb over? And our minimum threshold here is 9 inches.
Yes.
If you have more than 5 inches, if you have more than 9 inches of
I'm
ground
not going to
clearance,
go there, but go ahead.
you have good clearance. If less, you have no points. Explorer Timberline, they raised it. They raised the height of the Explorer Timberline, but it's still less than 9 inches. It's 8.7. And of course, the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk and also the L version of that, they both have air suspension options. They have huge ground clearance between about 10.9 inches to 11.3. So Grand Cherokee, once again, gets points here, and Ford does not.
Yeah, so think about it this way. If you're driving along and there's a 10-inch rock, the Grand Cherokee can go over it, whereas the Explorer will hit it. And then when you hit a rock, bad things happen to the underside of the vehicle unless you have skid plates. But let's keep going.
So next is angles, approach, departure, breakover angles. Our minimum threshold is 25 degrees. And this is actually a pretty tough one because many vehicles cannot or do not have 25 degrees of approach, departure, or breakover angle in the center to be judged on the scale. So the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, this new one, scores 10 out of 15 points, has really good approach, about 35 degrees, has really good departure, about 30 degrees, but its breakover angle is just under 24.3 degrees, so it gets 10 out of 15 points. And then Explorer Timberline gets 0 out of 15 because it has a 23.5 degrees of approach, 23.7 departure, and 17 breakover. So it goes to the Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, once again, now in real life, that means, let's say you're going over a trail and you approach a step, which we just did yesterday, actually. We just actually did this going up Argentine Pass. Mm-hmm. And the question is, will you hit the front end of the vehicle or will the front end be high enough so that you can kind of hit the tire and go up and over it. So
Yeah.
will you do damage to your car? And obviously, if you do damage to your car, it's not as off-road worthy as if you don't. Keep going, Andre. This is interesting.
So the next category is skid plates, and here I have to kind of wave my hand a little.
Okay.
Because
like the Yoda thing. Like
because I have never.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I haven't been underneath the Explorer Timberline,
Okay.
and I haven't been underneath the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk to verify all this data.
Yeah.
So I gave all of them 15 points.
Because we don't know.
Because we don't know. Because 3 minimum skid plates, so basically some protection in the front, some protection probably from like a transfer case or a transmission, and protection for the fuel tank.
And before you criticize us, be aware that we've done this show. We've done this now for 11 years. We've been doing off-road tests, and we have never had an Explorer, as far as I can tell.
Or at least this
Have we ever had an Explorer? Have we ever actually reviewed an Explorer?
Off-road?
Yeah, I don't think we ever have.
No, I was at the first launch of this Explorer.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of off-roading that Ford provided.
Okay.
Ford made a course. I drove over their course.
But we've never had the Timberline here.
No, or the regular Explorer.
Okay, fair enough.
But the reason why I gave everybody
just to keep it fair,
because sometimes skid plates, you have to actually see the vehicle to verify.
Yeah, because there are all kinds of different skid plates, right? There's like a lot of vehicles have that front skid plate, which is good, but it doesn't necessarily protect anything. It's kind of like there for show,
almost style, yes.
So anyway, we have to crawl underneath it. If you guys know, let us know in the comments below. All right.
Yep.
And what else is there, Andre?
Lockers.
Yep.
Lockers and tech. So we're basically done. So lockers are interesting because it's front locking differential, center like a transfer case, and rear. This is a tough one for these SUVs and crossovers because the Timberline Explorer has a limited slip differential in the back, not a locker. It has variable transfer of power front to back, not a locker. And it has basically same for the front, variable. So 0 out of 15 points there. For the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, it has a transfer case, so that's a locker.
Yeah, that's one
so
locker. That's a center locker.
Yeah, it's a center. It has limited slip in the rear and kind of an open system with brake actuation in the front. So it only gets 5 points. So 5 to 0 in this case. Jeep gets 5, Ford gets 0.
All right, Andre, here's the drum roll. That's a bad drum roll, sorry.
Well, our last category is cameras and tech.
Oh, one more. I forgot.
Sorry. All of them have great technology.
Okay.
Ford offers drive modes like we described, 360-degree cameras. Jeep does the same. So on this category, they all score perfect 5 points. Now the drum roll.
That's as good as I can do.
So the new Grand Cherokee Trailhawk. Which one do you want first?
Do the second place and then do the winner.
Okay, so
I should say winner. Do the one that is less off-road worthy and the one that is more off-road.
Okay, so the lower number is the Ford Explorer Timberline. It adds up to a total of 50 points out of 100. And we didn't do our subjective, obviously. We cannot. And then Grand Cherokee Trailhawk scored 90.
Wow.
So 50 versus 90. This is a big difference, and most of this difference came from the transfer case difference, also the ground clearance, also the approach and departure angles. That's where the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk was really much stronger. And if you're wondering, Grand Cherokee L, the 3-row, scored 75. So even the Grand Cherokee L scored 75 versus 50 for the Ford.
So Jim, at the end of this interview, said regarding that picture over your shoulder, which is a Grand Cherokee going up what looks like a pretty steep, probably one like maybe Hell's Revenge, one of those hills of Hell's Revenge. He said the Timberline, now he's referring to the Ford, would have made it to about, and he pointed right on the picture,
about there
to a sort of an incline. That's a 65. I assume you meant degree grade incline, and it wouldn't have made it. By there, and he pointed higher up. And I'm gonna say, based on our ORI score, until we actually get behind the wheel, I'm gonna rate that as most likely true.
Well, I think he's referencing maybe the traction.
Yeah.
Maybe he's referencing the approach angle.
But we have found that the ORI is a very good indicator of what happens in the real world. So if you're wondering what vehicle scored the most, think of like probably the Bronco. If you're a Ford fan, of course the Wrangler. If you're a Jeep fan, the G-Wagon. If you're a Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, like a 4Runner, for example.
Yeah, and a 4Runner. If you're a Toyota fan, those are up there in the high 90s. And so that'll kind of give you a sense of where these two vehicles shake out. But yeah, I'd love to get my hands on both of these and prove Jim either right or wrong in the real world. I think that's a video that we have to put on our must-do list.
Absolutely. And let us know, once again, what you guys think.
Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Ciao.